means that the number one pick in the 2021 NBA draft goes to the Detroit Pistons.
Who's got the number one pick in this year's draft? Who's got the number one pick in this year's draft?
Basketball!
Select Isaiah Stewart.
The Detroit Pistons select Killian Hayes.
Sadiq, that was absolutely sensational.
I don't know what went into that process. I met the criteria to be selected, but I wasn't.
From long range. Oh! Yes!
Detroit basketball! Pistons fans, welcome back to another edition of the Palace of Pistons Podcast, part of the Believe Network. I'm your host, Mike Anguilano, and joining me is my partner in crime, Aaron Johnson. Aaron, how are you doing, buddy?
Doing really good, Mike. Excited to be back. Our first Palace of Pistons podcast of 2023. Excited for what the new year has ahead for us, for Palace of Pistons, for the podcast, the website, all that good stuff. Unfortunately, we don't have Jasper with us today, but we've got some interesting topics to talk about. So I'm certainly ready to get into those and share my thoughts.
Yes, it is the first podcast in 2023. And, Aaron, most importantly, we're all hoping for good news, good stuff for the year, for all of our listeners as well. We saw a lot of growth in 2022. We didn't really talk about 2022 like in summation, but, the podcast saw some really awesome growth. And that goes back to all of our listeners. We hope that we will continue to grow more and more into 2023 as well. But you're right. We do have some things to talk about. And you know what? Maybe the biggest thing, at least here in the great state of Ohio, or at least the state of Ohio, that happened in 2023 is sports betting is now legalized. And I can't tell you how annoying this has been for my email inbox and every social media feed for the last 5 days, because I think I've been inundated with so many emails about sports betting that I would wake up to like 40 unread emails of places trying to pump up. We have sports betting now. So it's going to explode in Ohio. And that's a great segue into our longtime sponsor for the podcast, and that's BetOnline. And basketball is back, and BetOnline remains your number one source for all your sports betting needs this season. You'll always find the latest odds, team matchup info, player news, and game trends at BetOnline. And as your continued source for all sports wagering information, BetOnline features live betting, free contests, giveaways all season long. It's always the fastest and easiest way to bet all your favorite sports and events, whether that's the NFL, NBA, NHL, MMA, tennis, boxing, or even golf. Aaron, I saw the first ad for the Masters on New Year's Day. So it's here. We're already in Masters and golf season. Head on over to betonline.ag to receive your 50% welcome bonus with your first deposit using the promo code BLEAV. That's BLEAV. Never been a better time in the state of Ohio to make your first bet. And if you use BetOnline, you get a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit using our promo code BLEAV, BLEAV. BetOnline, where the game starts. Aaron, what did you think of the ball dropping at midnight and Ohio State, Noah Ruggles missing what would have been a game-winning field goal?
See, it sucked for me, excuse me, because I was sitting in a house divided. So yeah, myself, my dad, we wanted to obviously watch the football game. We wanted to see the kick. We kept flipping back and forth between, they have like those 2 or 3 different, New Year's Eve ball drop shows. And then there's the football game. So we're like flipping between like 4 channels, different performances. Like my sister wanted to watch I don't even know who it was, some person who was going to be performing. Obviously, I wanted to watch the football. I had other family members who were like, we got to see the ball drop. Like that is like, we've got to do our toes right when the ball drops. Like, so it lining up to where the ball was dropping right when the field goal was taking place was just insane. I lost the war. I did not get to see the kick live. I got to turn back to the kick to see, Georgia on the field, rushing the field, crying, like Stetson Bennett crying. Just crazy. That was a really good game. I don't really want to talk much about the Michigan game because
both games were very good.
It was the Michigan game was good, but it
They
was
were both
very
very good
disappointing
games.
because it feels like Michigan really gave that one away. And you could talk about the different calls made throughout, the reversal of the touchdown in the first half that I don't know how that happened. The targeting at the end of the game, not sure that would have ended up making a whole lot of difference. But even so, the football was great that day. The ball dropping at the same time as the kick was just like it feels like that's something that you're not going to see like happen again. It was so magical is not necessarily the right word. It wasn't like that like crazy of a moment, but just so like coincidental that it happened.
It was poetic.
Yes, poetic. That's a much better word. Thank you for being able to think, unlike me.
Well, especially in the state of Ohio, I can't imagine if that game had started, or rather that game had finished like after midnight when sports betting was live. The amount of money that would have been lost on Ohio State bets after midnight would have been astronomical if that kick had happened after the clock struck midnight. Just pain. I mean, like I said, I'm not an Ohio State supporter. I have a weird thing about not supporting a college I didn't go to. So, or rather supporting, a college I didn't go to. I went to Kent State. So to see all the Buckeyes fans, all the Buck nuts go crazy was bringing in the new year as an independent fan. It was nice to just not be involved in it, but it was a good day of football. Okay, let's go ahead and get started talking about some Pistons news. We do have some things to talk about. We'll go ahead and get started with some trade talk, as I think we've started every month since the season began. Teams are interested in Bojan Bogdanovic. According to Jake Fisher of Yahoo Sports, the Pistons are once again taking calls for Bogdanovic. They're seeking at least one first-round pick and a young player with upside or additional draft capital. The Dallas Mavericks, the Phoenix Suns, the Cleveland Cavaliers, the LA Lakers are among teams interested in Bojan Bogdanovic. So, not surprising again. We kind of figured that there'd be more chatter about Bogdanovic being traded, especially now that the team is going to be bad. You and I both sort of advocated that you should probably hold on to him. There's not really any reason to just trade him unless you're really getting outstanding capital back. We just watched Bogdanovic have a great game yesterday against the Warriors, and not just shooting the ball. He had a really nice fourth quarter as a passer, as a playmaker as well, being a savvy vet, making smart decisions. Has your position changed on whether or not you would want to trade Bojan Bogdanovic?
Yeah, not at all. I mean, if anything, it's become even more clear to me that the Pistons need to keep him. He is potentially the only reason this team looks like an NBA team some nights. Just the professionalism that he brings, I think something that goes overlooked for a lot of teams that are in the midst of a losing season, whether they're in a rebuild by default or the season's just gone awry for them for whatever reasons. I think something that gets overlooked is having those veterans that, can man the ship, that keep the morale going, that keep the locker room going, that serve as leaders both on and off the court. And Bogdanovic is exactly that for a team whose season has just been an absolute disaster. He's putting up career numbers as a scorer, as a distributor. His efficiency has been phenomenal. I mean, he's shooting 42% from the 3-point line on 6 attempts per game. He's shooting, 53% from inside the arc. That's right around where, right around his career high. So his efficiency as the number one option for this team cannot go unnoticed. And he's doing this at 33 years old. He has a style of play that will translate as he continues to get older. I mean, the fact that he's seemingly gotten better as he's, gotten to this point in his career only solidifies that belief for me. And the Pistons have him locked up now on a very team-friendly deal. We've talked about it before, but they have him under contract now for next season, and then they have a team option for the year after, where only $2 to $3 million of that is guaranteed. So this is a player who's on a team-friendly deal, has been the best player on the Pistons this season. And if next year really is the year that the Pistons maybe push some chips in and make some moves to really solidify a playoff push, Bogdanovic is a guy that you want on this team. You look at the wings on Detroit's roster, and this is something that I was talking about during the Golden State game, something that I've talked about before as well, is the Pistons don't have wing depth. Like, we're at a point where Dwayne Casey is playing Hamidou Diallo, Rodney McGruder, Kevin Knox had his turn in the rotation. Like, those are Detroit's backup wings. And like, I get Sadiq Bey's regression has played a factor in that. I get Isaiah Livers has been hurt, but good teams have good depth. And I feel like the Pistons don't have that. Like, the unfortunate reality of the situation is guys like McGruder, Diallo, Knox are getting minutes. And in my mind, at best, all three of those guys are 15th men on an NBA roster. And, you know, there are nights where all three of them are entrenched in the rotation for Detroit. And right now it's at least two of them. That's not ideal. You need to have wings on your roster. That's, you know, people say, oh, you need guards. You need guards in this league. That's the most important position. I think it's wings. I think you got to have a big time wing. And not that Bogdanovic is some all-star level wing, but he's by far and away the best forward on Detroit's roster. And you have him on such a good deal that it just makes no sense in the world to trade him, especially if you are trying to make the playoffs, because he brings a high level of basketball IQ. He is a great person to have on the court and in the locker room. He has not given up on this team. He doesn't, just sit nights out. He's always playing. He's always going with effort, and he genuinely cares and is trying to win when he's out there. You watch him play on both sides of the court. He's not just going through the motions. He's talking to officials. These are things that matter to me. I look at it from a bigger picture, not from, the Pistons just need more draft picks because they suck, so they have to get more draft capital so they can draft more players. This is something that I've said before as well. You can only have so many 20, 21, 22-year-olds on your roster. You can only have so many guys on the rookie contract on your roster. So Bogdanovic has been the best player on the team this year. They have him on a good contract moving forward. I get teams are interested. That's to be expected. I'm interested in what you think about Cleveland now being named as one of those teams that are interested in Bogdanovic. I'm not sure that they necessarily would have the firepower if Detroit did decide to move on from Bogdanovic to make a play. But obviously, with your perspective, being a around the Cavaliers situation, I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, so my position has not changed with Bogdanovic either. I don't think the Pistons need to trade him. But in looking at some of these teams, and I guess we'll start with the Cavaliers, because I think this will be pretty quick. They don't have the assets, I think, to swing for Bogdanovic. They've really just hamstrung themselves to a degree that was going to make it very difficult to trade anything else in the middle of the season. They gave up so much for Donovan Mitchell. They gave up so much draft capital for the rest of the decade to get him. And obviously that is paying off already. The 71 points, and he's hit a clutch three yesterday against the Suns. I mean, he's been everything and more that Cleveland has asked for. And Bogdanovic would fit unbelievably well in this starting lineup right now. The Cavs just have a gaping hole at the three, which is why it's so unfortunate that LeBron's unhappy in LA or seemingly disgruntled and can't be moved. The one time that the Cavs do actually need a small forward, they can't go and get him. I just don't think they have enough draft capital. I really don't. And they have Lamar Stevens, they have Jetty Osman, they have Dean Wade, who's going back from injury. They have Isaac Okoro, who would be the most ideal person because he can defend, but he's shooting a career worst from deep. And looks lost on offense if he's not standing in the corner, which it just mucks the offense up so bad. So they need a wing bad. None of those names, I don't know if I mentioned Karis LeVert, but him as well. He's probably going to be traded, if I had to guess. He had no contract talks for an extension with the Cavs this offseason, so I feel like as an expiring, he'll have some value across the league. I just don't think any of what I mentioned really interests you at all, and it shouldn't. There are other teams I think can put together packages that are better for Bogdanovic, but if the Pistons are asking for what they're asking for, essentially it'd be a first and some decent secondary piece. I don't know if the Cavs have enough necessarily. I mean, is there anything that you like on the roster that the Cavs will be willing to give up? I mean, I legitimately don't think there's anything, but maybe you have a different opinion.
Yeah, I think that them not being able to move their 2024 first rounder is pretty damning for them in terms of trying to make a move to acquire a wing, which they do really need from
the discussion ends pretty much there, right? I mean, they can't trade that pick. It's pretty much stopping at that point. It seems like they're just kind of stuck with what they have for this year, and you hope that LeBron asks out, right?
Yeah, I guess for them, I mean, that's really what they could only hope for. Because just not having that first round pick, I just don't see how they can acquire a wing like Bogdanovic, because they don't have the assets that are on the roster. Karis LeVert isn't a big enough asset, and these guys like Lamar Stevens or Dean Wade or anything like that just aren't going to move the needle. Obviously, they're not working in Cleveland, so I don't think there's a team that's going to go in and really buy into those guys working for them. So for Cleveland, it's tough. I don't see how they really get involved in this, unless it's some sort of 3-team trade. But even then, how do the assets shake out there? I haven't really looked at Dallas and what they have to offer, but if there was a team that, in terms of wanting to see them succeed, Bogdanovic would really help Dallas. He would fit great next to Luka, and I would be interested in seeing how much better he would make them for a team that made it to the conference finals last year. Getting someone like Bogdanovic would be huge for them. But again, I don't really think Detroit should be looking to trade him. I don't think there's going to be a package out there that's going to pay well enough for Bogdanovic. And the value he brings to Detroit is very real if you're watching them on a nightly basis. So that's where I'm at in this entire situation.
Nothing with the Suns or the Lakers.
Phoenix really would be, it would have to be Jay Crowder, right? Jay Crowder, and then whatever picks that they can offer. And I don't know what those are. They don't have a young guy sitting on the end of that roster that just hasn't gotten a chance because he's on a really good team. And you're obviously not getting someone, you're not getting one of their better players that's playing minutes for them right now. But they own their own 2023 first. They own their own 2024 first. They own their first round picks. So if Detroit was that interested in a late first, Phoenix does have that to work with. I think you'd be looking at getting back Jay Crowder. I would imagine Jay Crowder doesn't really want to play in Detroit. I'd imagine he wants to play for a contender. So you have that.
He wants a contract.
That as well. And so I don't know how the market looks for Bogdanovic right now. I don't know what team can pay the price that Detroit wants. And there's also been speculation that the Pistons are just kind of pricing themselves out, pricing teams out to the point where they're eventually going to have to come down and take a little bit less to trade Bogdanovic. But I don't buy into the fact that they're really looking to move off of him. So, these teams that are interested, that we're getting reports that they're interested in, they don't really have the assets to meet Detroit's price. And, I'm in agreement with where Detroit stands on, look, if they were to move off of Bogdanovic, it would have to be a first round pick and a young asset. You look at the season he's having, you look at the contract, there's a lot of value there. So you have to get paid properly for that. And these teams in the market right now, they just don't look that like they have the assets to make that trade possible.
Well, the Lakers don't. I don't think.
I'd say the Lakers and Cavs for sure don't.
Unless the Lakers are willing to move on from some of the draft picks that they won't purportedly move for Buddy Hield and or Miles Turner. I mean, I just don't see a pathway for that happening either. Maybe the price comes down. I don't think the Pistons have any reason to lower the price. This seems like a ploy to get people to go up and up and up and up, to see what they can get out of a really desperate team, but they don't have to trade him, as we've said multiple times. Bogdanovic has had a good stretch, and that's going to segue into our next topic, which is stock report, and he's my stock up guy. He's had more than 20 points in 4 of his last 6 games. He has carried this offense many, many nights. He's been shooting the ball much better. Like I said, yesterday had a couple plays. James Edwards III from The Athletic highlighted a couple of them. He had some very key passes there in the fourth quarter against the Warriors that eventually led to a win out in the Bay Area. He's my stock up. I think all of his excellent play is going to make teams maybe pony up a little bit more for a trade, but he's been outstanding. To me, lately, he's probably been playing more than I think we would have imagined, or at least he's playing better than I think we could have imagined him playing when Detroit acquired him. So he's my stock up guy. Aaron, who's your stock up?
I'm going to run it back. We didn't have a show last week, so I couldn't run it back with him last week, but I can come back to him this week on the flip side of a new year. It's Jalen Duren. Jalen Duren's been just phenomenal since entering the starting lineup. He's hit a couple games where it wasn't great for him, but he bounced back, and he's continuing to be Detroit's best big on the roster right now. The other night against Golden State, 18 points, 11 rebounds, 100% from the field shooting. And I know he doesn't have some refined offensive game where he's scoring off a bunch of post moves and a mid-range jumper. Like, I get that's not there yet with him, but the fact that he is finishing, he's putting himself in position on the offensive glass. He was finishing phenomenal at the rim and pick and rolls. It's coming together for him. As a starter, he's averaging 11.4 rebounds per game. If he were, starting all year and putting up those numbers, he'd be 5th in the league in rebounds per game, only behind Sabonis, Giannis, Clint Capella, and Rudy Gobert. So he's in elite company there. The field goal percentage, as a starter, he's shooting 66% from the field. That's pretty dang good for a center. I just really, really am intrigued by him. I think he has solidified himself as the best big on the roster, the best rookie currently on the roster. And he just looks like a guy that is going to have a 15-year career doing what he does. Tim Forkins dubbed him as a more self-aware Andre Drummond. I think that's a great way to put it. You can see a lot of the parallels in the way that they play. You can put together a lot of parallels in the way that Duren has played in his rookie year and how Drummond played in his rookie year. Duren's been phenomenal. I'm very, very intrigued to see, how he continues to grow. I think it's going to take some time for him on the offensive side of the floor, but what he's doing right now can't go unnoticed. And he's just been huge for this team as they've quietly rattled off 3 wins in their last 5 games.
And he's been a big part of that. Jalen Duren's been awesome, as we've said many times on this podcast, and he is a more self-aware Andre Drummond. That's a good call from Tim Forkin, the host of the Palace Pistons After Dark podcast. If you haven't checked that out, I highly encourage it. Aaron, what about stock down?
I'm going to go with Isaiah Stewart. And this is controversial. I get it. I tweeted earlier today that over his last 10 games, Isaiah Stewart shooting 26% from the 3-point line. Just something to monitor moving forward after, he had a nice stretch shooting the ball after starting the season not shooting the three ball well. He's kind of just wavered back and forth, where he's had a couple of stretches now where the three ball's not going in. He had a stretch where it was. It's just something for me that I'm keeping my eyes on. Apparently, other people are monitoring the situation as well. I had some people in my responses saying it's nothing to worry about. We shouldn't be watching it. For that, I'll say, if we're going to talk about the 10-game stretch where Killian's shooting 38% from the three-point line, we should also talk about the stretch where Stewart's shooting 26%. Like, let's be fair in our assessments. Let's look at both sides of the equation. And I get that that's hard for fans to do sometimes. They only want to look at the positives. They only want to look at the good stuff going on. But you have to also look at some of the stuff that has to improve. And for Stewart, I think a large part of his success in the NBA will rely on his three-point shooting. I think he has to be a reliable three-point shooter. And maybe that regression a little bit over the last 10 games has been related to him starting to do and try a little bit more off the dribble. Maybe that's taking a little bit more energy out of him, whatever it may be. Like, that is what we're seeing from him off the dribble is fun. It's encouraging. He's had some big time dunks. And I'm not saying that, Isaiah Stewart's been flat out bad or anything. But again, to me, a lot of his success in the NBA hinges on his ability to stretch the floor. Over the last 10, he hasn't been able to do that. So that's my stock down. I don't want to keep going with the same guys every week. I could go back with Marvin Bagley. We're going to talk about him. I could have gone back to Jaden Ivey, but want to switch it up a little bit. And I felt like what's going on with Stewart had to at least be looked at. Others don't want to look at it. That's fine. Others are looking at it very hard, apparently. They're looking at it the same way I'm looking at it, which is fine as well. But just thought it's something that we should be monitoring moving forward.
Right. And that is his long-term viability, is being able to shoot from deep. He has been driving to the rim more. There still needs to be some growth there too. I just don't know if he has the explosiveness to be able to do that. And without a threat of being able to shoot from deep, that really limits his abilities to get to the rim as well. Guys are not going to be too fearful of him, but he is trying to shoot threes. The confidence hasn't wavered a whole lot. He is still shooting pretty poor from deep, like I said, over his last 10 games or so, but he is attempting more threes. There is at least a desire to expand his game. You already mentioned Killian Hayes, who was kind of my stock down as well. He's not shooting the ball particularly well. The Pistons were he was a plus 12 yesterday, for what that's worth. I think the plus minus is a little flawed. That's not my favorite stat to go to, but the Pistons were a plus 12 with him on the floor last night against Golden State. Not shooting the ball particularly well, but still making an impact. He was kind of my half stock down. Marvin Bagley is also stock down with the news of his surgery, which we'll get to in a moment as well. That's probably just a good segue into Marvin Bagley's news on his hand surgery. Detroit announced that he underwent surgery to repair the third and fourth metacarpals in his right hand. Aaron, I must say I am surprised that this is a 6-week injury. I was not expecting a reevaluation in 6 weeks based on the initial news about the injury. So, we were questioning of the extension for Bagley in the offseason. How are you feeling now, knowing that he's going to be out for a sizable chunk of the season heading into 2023?
Yeah, it doesn't feel great that Bagley's the second highest paid player on the roster, and he's out for another 6 weeks after only appearing in 25 of the 41 games so far this year. He's already missed a good chunk of games, and now he's going to be out for probably, and he's just being reevaluated in 6 weeks. So we're probably looking at a two-month absence from Bagley at the minimum by the time he gets back into the practice court and then gets brought back to the rotation and whatnot. He's going to play maybe half the games this year if he's lucky. That's not a trend that is of odd for him. He played 43 games in the 2020-21 season. He played 48 last year. He played 13 in 2019. His rookie year was the only year he played over 60 games. And yeah, we were skeptical of the extension at the time that it happened. I remember some of the narratives. I remember some of the things we talked about. Who was bidding against Detroit for Bagley? Why did they feel the need to pay that much? Does he help this team enough? And was that financial commitment necessary when you brought in Isaiah Stewart, when you drafted and traded Jeremy Grant so that you could then draft Jalen Duren, and you traded for Nerlens Noel, who isn't in the rotation now for whatever reason, but was sold to the people as an acquisition that was going to be a part of Detroit's rotation. And now Bagley's out, and he has not been very good this year. The shooting's not there. Obviously, the defense is still a disaster. It's just he doesn't give this team enough of anything. And that includes availability. There's a world where he could have been fine as a bench big, beating up on backup centers. But when he's only able to play 40 games out of the season, $13 million a year for him just isn't worth it, plain and simple. And you, me, Jasper, others in Palace of Pistons had our reservations about the extension when it happened. This is Bagley's, fourth injury of the season already. He's now going to miss extended time for, the second time this year. He started the season unavailable, missed some more games throughout once he got back. And now he's out again. And that's not all new territory. Bagley has had an injury-riddled career so far. So for me, this is not unexpected. And it's just another thing that's played into just a bad year for the franchise. Injuries suck, and you lose Cade Cunningham for the season. I'm genuinely curious if Isaiah Livers is ever going to play again, because when he initially got hurt, I don't believe it was supposed to be some long-term thing. I genuinely can't remember the last time he played, and he's just in street clothes every game. So now Bagley's out too, and I just don't know. This season can't get any worse, and it's just a continuation of the injury bug and just things not going right for the team this year.
A dark horse stock down guy could be Isaiah Livers, just because of Bagley's injury. This is an area where Livers could have benefited from being on the court and soaking up some of those minutes. I mean, he's a guy that I was very high on coming into the season. I thought, after Grant was traded, start Isaiah Livers. He's able to shoot. He could defend. He's got okay size. When we talked about guys who, now that Cunningham's out, the Pistons have to evaluate what they have. Isaiah Livers is one of those guys that I was hoping we would get a look at, seeing who they could evaluate and figuring out if he's going to stick, because I think he has the size and the tools and the skill set to be a really helpful bench player. And I don't know what the hell happened to him. I have no idea what the injury is, what the problem is, if it's disciplinary, I don't know. But he's a dark horse stock down guy who could have benefited from some of these injuries, particularly an injury to Bagley, which frees up some minutes at the 4. I'm looking at lineup data with Livers at the 4. It's not particularly lovely to look at, but he has played some 4. He could have benefited. Who stands to benefit from Bagley being out for probably 2 months?
It would be Livers if he could ever come back. He's been out. He got hurt against Dallas at the beginning of December, so it's been over a month now. I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, he had like a setback right before he was supposed to come back. But he'd be the guy. There's a lot of minutes in that second unit that can be available. The Pistons are rolling with, last night against Golden State, they used an 8-man rotation outside of, I think it was 4 minutes for Rodney McGruder. And 20 of those minutes went to Hamidou Diallo. It's like, there are some minutes up for grabs if someone like Livers could come back. And that's a guy that you want to kind of figure out, like, is he a part of your future? Like, even if this season is now a wash for Detroit, now that they're only 1 game better at this point of the season than they were last season. Last year they were 10-31 through 41 games. Through 41 games this year, they're 11-30. They were 10-31, and then this year they're 11-30. So they're one game better from last year. Even with the season being lost, you'd like to kind of maybe get some of these young guys on the court to see what they can do for you, to see if they're worth the roster spot next season. And Livers just hasn't been able to stay on the court this year, and he wasn't able to do it last year. So instead, you're seeing minutes to Diallo, McGruder, Kevin Knox, like guys that, again, just they don't make or break your team. They shouldn't be a part of your game day rotation. Those are break the glass, blowout game type guys. But Detroit's having to play them because they just don't have the depth and they don't have the health. So Livers, as soon as he comes back, should immediately benefit from the Bagley injury. I think it's you look at the rest of the roster, they don't have a lot of those combo 4-5s or that can play minutes. It's like, are you gonna play Kevin Knox now? I really don't think that's a great idea. So the Bagley injury
might have
sucks,
to, like you said.
The Pistons options were so slim that Bagley made sense. And now that he's hurt, you really don't have anything to step in for him.
Yeah, it's problematic. I was really hoping that this would be a nice season for Livers with a more carved out role, because he played well last year when his number was called. It just didn't, it just didn't lead to winning, and not a whole lot of people saw it because the Pistons were terrible. But he played very well, and he looked like he had a fitting role on a team. It's disappointing that we won't be able to see that. I mean, CBS Sports says a right shoulder sprain. I know that has been said several times. I mean, I don't know about you. I haven't seen any injury update from him from any of the beat, other than it continues to be a troublesome shoulder sprain.
Yeah, I mean, we'd certainly like to get a little bit more information on it. We'd certainly like to know more about what's kept him out for a whole month. Like you said,
Didn't we have a weird sort of injury or lack of news with Isaiah Stewart and his foot?
Yeah, was that last year?
I think it was last year.
Last year, because
maybe over the summer
league, or was that? No, that was last year, right?
I don't know. It's 2023. I think it was 2021 actually, because wasn't he part of Team USA basketball?
Yes, and he got hurt with Team USA basketball.
Maybe, but there was like a weird lack of news on that injury, and then Kate Cunningham injury. We got no information for weeks, and then all of a sudden, Woj dropped a bomb that said he's out for the year. After getting surgery, it's like some of these. I mean, it's just a little question. It's just a little fishy, a little strange. I mean,
the medical staff in Detroit is not a storied group. I think I'll leave it at that. I don't want to go into too much detail, but it's not.
We'll leave it at that. That'll be for another podcast.
They miss Arnie Kander. I'll say that.
Yeah, that's a nice way of summarizing it quickly.
Bring back my guy Arnie. Bring back my guy.
There
Arnie.
You go.
That's actually probably one of my favorite podcast episodes. Is when we talked to Arnie Kander. He was phenomenal.
Friend of the show, Arnie
Kander. Absolutely. I hope he's listening.
Yeah.
He'll still reach out to me from time to time. So
that's awesome.
He's the best, and he was beloved in Detroit for so many reasons, and probably the biggest one was just how good he was at his job and how revolutionary he was to the sports training game in the NBA. So yeah, the Pistons are sorely missing that. I think you look at their injury history, the lack of recovery, the lingering issues. I've heard some nightmare stories, but I'll leave it at that. I don't want to. I hate always sounding. People always view me as the negative Nancy type when it comes to talking about the Pistons, and it didn't used to be that way. But when so many bad things happen, it's hard to just ignore them. You can't always put a positive spin on everything. But we'll try.
We're going to put a positive spin on the end of this podcast.
Let's do it.
And I think that the Arnie Kander thing is a nice positive spin to end this podcast. Hey, here is the other positive spin. Saddiq Bey hitting a game winner. That was cool. That was cool to watch. And he's been kind of slumping. He's had a weird year. He's been in and out starting lineup. I hope that gives him some confidence. He was still 6 of 17 from the floor yesterday, 4 of 10 from deep. I hope that gives him some confidence because, dear Lord, with all the injuries to offensive players, and Bagley is only an offensive player, and Cade Cunningham is obviously their best player. With all these injuries to key offensive players, Saddiq Bey getting a little bit of confidence, getting a little bit of a rhythm during these cold, at least cold up here in Northeast Ohio and up in Michigan, these cold months would be nice to see him get a little hot. We've kind of been down on Saddiq lately, but hitting that game winner, I mean, you could see a different side of him come out even when he was celebrating. I mean, it was just very positive to see. I hope it turns into some more positive games moving forward.
Yeah, that was a wonderful, wonderful win for Detroit. I mean, give them all the credit. Golden State 17-2 at home going into last night's game. I watched until the end of the third, and that's when I was just like, all right, I got to be up in the morning. Like, let me go place my money line bet on Golden State, one of the best fourth quarter teams in the league. Detroit, one of the worst fourth quarter teams in the league. Golden State at home. Like, I'll just go place my bet now on Golden State. I'll go to bed and I'll see what happened in the morning. And I mean, give all the credit to Detroit for going out there, getting the job done. I mean, obviously that shot, a miracle type shot from Saddiq Bey, but to be able to stay with Golden State in Golden State, that's not easy to do. That's just Golden State's third loss at home this year, and we're into January now. So all the props in the world to the Pistons yesterday. I mean, Bogdanovic was phenomenal. You got 29 from him. They had 6 guys score in double figures. Killian, 3 of 12 from the field, but he had 13 assists. He was moving the ball really well to Duren in the pick and roll, set up Bogey a handful of times. So yeah, definitely give Detroit credit for that win, against Golden State. And hey, they've won 3 of their last 5. Let's give them credit for that. That's been pretty remarkable with how many injuries they've had.
Yeah, I was going to say, with all the injuries that they have, winning 3 of 5 is impressive no matter what, but doing it on the road against a very good team at home in Golden State is certainly impressive. And, you want to see that from Killian, not shooting the ball well, still finds a way to get 13 dimes. I think that's important to see. The confidence wasn't lost in his game. It was just maybe the maturity showing that, I don't need to shoot the ball. I should stop shooting the ball. I need to find other ways to get guys involved. And, you just like to see that too. I kind of like this idea of talking about a Pistons win to end every podcast. I think this is a good idea moving forward for the rest of the season.
They got to get them. Otherwise, it's going to have to be like those back in time moments that, they'll go back and look at 7 or something. It's like, the Pistons don't get a lot of wins, so you can't always count on having that available to you at the end of a show. But
we'll just have Jasper tell a story. And if Jasper's not on the podcast and there's no Pistons win, then we'll talk about, I don't know, Isaiah Thomas and Bill Laimbeer for like 3 minutes just to reset the palate.
Yeah, just to get off of the 11 and 30 Pistons. We'll talk about better times.
Right. Hey, but we just had a positive moment. The Pistons have won 3 of 5. Anything else you want to say before we wrap up this edition of the Palace of Pistons podcast?
I mean, excited for 2023, man. Hopefully we can continue to do some more cool things. Who knows where the year is going to take us. Love doing this podcast. And excited to keep doing it. We'll be back next week.
You're darn right that we will. And we hope that you'll join us next week for another edition of the Palace of Pistons podcast, part of the Believe Network. So for my co-host, Aaron Johnson, I am Mike Anguilano. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you all next time.